You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. I'm sitting here today with artist Wendy Allen, who recently did a lecture over at the National Park, at the Visitor Center, actually. And some of you who've been here before, you might have been driving down Baltimore Street and noticed an art gallery with, I believe you have a picture of Lincoln, on your sign or in the window?
You could probably see them from the window.
From the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's other places where you've seen these paintings of Abraham Lincoln in various styles and whatnot. And that is Wendy Allen who is behind that. And she is with us today. So thank you, Wendy, for coming in.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Your first podcast ever.
Yep, it is.
So we are honored to have you on. And we hope that... this isn't too scary for you.
Frightened.
Okay, so let's start with Lincoln. First of all, you as an artist, has this been a lifelong thing? Is this something that you've always done, or did you pick this up later in life?
Later in life, definitely. About 25. Never had an art lesson ever.
Okay.
But grew to, I was exposed to it in my first job, my first employment, and decided that I caught the bug with the paintbrush and canvases.
And you were around 20. So I was 27 when I did the same thing. No, I had, like, people would be like, oh, you should try painting. And I said, I can't even draw stick figures. And my first painting was terrible. I called it the Lone Howitzer, and it was just on a little panel, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just one little cannon. And I did it in acrylics, and I brought it over to my friend's restaurant. And I went in and I said, look what I did. I was all proud of myself and everything. And she goes, oh, that's so darling. How old were you when you did this?
Ooh.
And I said, I just did it an hour ago. And so that inspired me to learn how to really do it. And she still has it in her summer kitchen, just sitting there on the wall, because she thinks it's the funniest thing in the world. That she thought I was about 4 when I did it.
But it'd be worth a fortune. I didn't know you did art. You do art?
Yeah. Well, I paint.
You paint.
See, I would never.
I understand that.
Yes, I don't call myself an artist because, and even when I was playing music, I never called myself a musician.
Yeah.
I play music. I don't, and so yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I should.
Oh no, there's no way you would have known it. I mean, unless you follow me on Instagram and see all my paintings that I put up. And
I will now.
People laugh at them. And
no.
No, they don't laugh at them. They say very nice things, but you know how, well, I'm sure you're the same way as an artist. You're your worst critic.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You look at something and it's, maybe not what you think in your head, and it doesn't come out the way you want it, and you think it's terrible, and people come over and, I remember one time I had a painting of mine hanging up in my friend's cafe, and I hated it. That's why I gave it to him. I was like, this is crap. Mm-hmm. And within like 3 days, he calls me up and he goes, some lady wants to know how much you want for that painting on the wall. and that taught me that the old adage, one man's trash is another man's treasure, is true.
That is true.
Because what I hate, somebody else might love. So you start painting at 25.
Yep.
Do you take lessons, or are you self-taught?
Self-taught.
Okay, same here. Now, back then you didn't have YouTube like I did, so you couldn't look up Bob Ross to learn how to get started.
You'd have to watch on TV, right?
Yeah, right. So how did you get started? Like, what were you...
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be, my first job was a secretary in a design department. And these designers not only designed, or graphic designers, but they were also painters on the side. So I got to go into their studios and watch them paint and look at their work. And it sort of took the mystery out of it. And also I was in the Bay Area, and the art scene in the early 80s was amazing.
Okay.
So it was really fun.
The San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
And you say it took the mystery out of it. What was the mystery before you did that? Like, what did you find mystifying?
Like, you didn't really have to be able to draw exactly.
Correct.
And you could just be a painter. Mm-hmm. I think people often confuse illustration with painting, and I'm not an illustrator by any stretch. And when people ask me to illustrate something, I go, you know what? I'm not really an illustrator. I'm a painter.
And then they go, well, what do you mean? You paint these beautiful pictures. How can you not be an illustrator? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I get that too. And I'm more of like a landscape person. I can't do people. I can't do anything that is supposed to look like something someone else could recognize. In other words, like I can't do a person. I can't do buildings. So it's just landscapes, and if there is a building, it's a tiny little thing off in the distance that you just go, oh, that looks like a barn, but it's so small that I can't get it wrong.
Sounds awesome.
I do work with someone who is an illustrator. She's actually a sketch artist, and she does invitations, wedding invitations, and she'll sketch the church that it's going to be in or whatever, put on the invitation.
Sure.
And she does a really good job. And I said, listen, I want to do battlefield, like barns and farmhouses and stuff, but I can't do this to save my life. And I know that if I try to do it on my own, there are people out there that literally know how many bricks are in the seminary building on the west wall, and they're going to count to make sure. And I'm like, so would you, like, if I give you a canvas and a picture that I took, would you, draw, and I'll just color it in. It's like a coloring book, like a grown-up coloring book.
Sure.
So that's, I've been working on one for like a year now of the Sherfy farm, and
That sounds great.
It sounds great, but I hate it.
Andy Warhol used to work that way.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He collaborated with other artists to get something down on canvas, and then he would simply paint it in. I mean, it's not an unusual concept.
Okay, good. So it's not like I'm doing half the work.
No.
Well, I mean, I am doing half the work.
Well, I mean, you are, but it's still, but you conceived the idea, and
yeah. Okay.
it's all
so
art.
it's like, okay. Well, then maybe I don't feel so bad about doing it that way.
Can't be too hard on yourself.
Okay, good. But I am, and we all are, I think, in some way or another, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So now, what do you start, when you start painting, what types of paintings were you doing?
Landscapes, still life, really awful paintings.
Really?
Terrible.
Like really, really terrible, or terrible by your...
really terrible. And then I thought I was being really clever and doing maybe some surreal images, Ugh. But it was fun. I had fun. It was good learning.
It's fun to, right. Yeah, exactly. And you see your improvements along the way.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you suddenly go, you know what I'm going to do is paint a whole bunch of Lincoln? And is that all you do? Like, you don't do anything else? Or
no, I do battlefield landscapes.
Okay.
I do other portraits. Yeah, I experiment. Some abstract pieces. But I always go back.
Claim to fame is Lincoln.
Yeah.
And how did you get into that? Because one of the things that you were showing in, and for those of you who've heard it on the free feed, on the the audio version of it, I wish I had been doing video, because it really didn't do it justice, because there was a lot of visual that you had in there. So I told the people, I made a little introduction to the audio of it, and I said something to the effect of, since you don't have a visual when all the music is playing, just imagine Lincoln in your head and reflect on what she said leading into it, and maybe you'll get some kind of theater of the mind going there, and you can make your own show up, But you open... The first video, I think it was, had a slow zoom in on the picture of Lincoln. It's the Gettysburg picture.
They call that the Gettysburg portrait.
Portrait, yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is my favorite one of him.
Oh, mine too.
Because you're looking right into the guy's eyes.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it is. Was that the first Lincoln picture you saw that got you wanting to do this?
It was certainly the most interesting portrait of Lincoln that I wanted to duplicate in a painting, in a modern interpretation, in a contemporary yeah.
So now you say modern interpretation. Mm-hmm. What I thought was really neat was that you'll do different styles.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. And when you look at things that are like kind of like Jackson Pollocky and everything, I look at them and I see like a $20,000 price tag on it, and I go, "This is so stupid. I could do that." And then I try to do it.
If you see a $20,000 price tag, buy it on a Pollock.
Well, I don't necessarily mean his, but I mean something like his, that style.
Sure.
I think a lot of people that aren't even painters even have this reaction. It's like $20,000 for that paint. I could do that.
Right.
Just going to throw some paint. But then I go and try to do it, and it looks terrible. There's something to that style. more than just randomly throwing stuff.
There is, and when you look at a Pollock or you see a Pollock exhibit, you understand really what he was all about. There is a beautiful rhythm and a beautifulness to his work that it's wonderful.
What is it? What is the rhythm and the beautifulness to his work? Because I don't
well,
see
I
it.
think, it's it is complicated, but I do think that it comes from the mystique of Pollock himself, the story that gets created around him that brings it all to the work. But when you do look at his work, they're beautifully layered. They're traditionally done like any good painting, from dark to light. So you get great contrast. It is completely different. Out in Chicago at the Institute, the museum out there. I'm sorry, I'm having a blank on the museum, but they have the last painting that he did prior to the splatter paintings. And it's kind of dull and kind of boring. So when you see that painting, and then you realize that he stopped all that kind of painting and moved on to the splatter painting, the splatter painting becomes alive.
So did he move on to the splatter painting because he just got frustrated because his other ones were boring? And he just was throwing paint and he goes, hey, I think, how did he do that?
In my talk yesterday, he did go to a show where Janet Sobel was showing her work, and now they're saying that she was the first splatter painter and was influenced greatly by her work. Her work is beautiful, and it was all splatter painting. And he started splatter painting after he saw her work.
You mentioned, I can't remember her name, but right in the beginning, she was a lady who posed Lincoln for those.
Sarah Fisher Ames.
Sarah Fisher Ames. And that's interesting. I've never heard that before. So it wasn't Alexander Gardner who was posing him or anybody, or was she just with him? Or tell the story about that.
Sure. From my understanding, and there's still research to be done, she went with John Nicolay to the Alexander Gardner studio. Lincoln shows up with, Sarah Fisher Ames goes with Hayes. Lincoln comes with Nicolay. The four of them are there. Sarah Fisher Ames is she's frustrated by sketching Lincoln because he's always on the move. She needs him to sit down, and that's not unusual for those times for artists. And she is frustrated by not having the exact measurements of Lincoln's face and body, bust. Mm-hmm. And so she, from what I can determine, takes that photograph to get the exact measurements of his face. If you notice, he's got the floating left eye. He's not symmetrical. She's very frustrated by that. So she wants a good shot of his face. And that's where we come up with that iconic photo.
So that photograph, the Gettysburg portrait, is not intended to be a portrait for release or to hang on the wall. It's supposed to just be a study of the man's face.
At that time, yep.
Interesting.
It becomes wildly popular at the turn of the century.
And you had some other pictures there of Lincoln, I'm guessing from that same photo session.
There were 5 pictures taken.
Yeah, and I don't think I've seen those other ones where he's it's a full body, just him sitting in the chair. It was interesting.
2 shots of him sitting in the chair, and then he poses with Nicolay and Hay.
Yeah. Now, when you first started painting Lincoln, did you start off saying, I'm going to paint Lincoln and I'm going to do it in different styles every time? I'm going to copy like other styles and then, paint Lincoln, or did that evolve?
I think I started out knowing that I wanted to certainly do more contemporary, just be freer with the portrait painting. And then I realized as I was going that how much fun it was to experiment with the styles. And then I just never looked back.
Okay. And you kept on going. What was the first Lincoln painting you sold?
I was out in the Bay Area, and Apple came out with a little I don't even know what the heck it was. I can't even remember, those little whatever. Uh-huh. And I actually swapped a painting for one of those. That was my third Lincoln that I had painted. And so I don't know if that was really a sale, but... Well,
it was a barter.
It was a barter.
Yeah. So, and how much was the Apple thing that you got?
I have no
Well, I mean, whatever it was
expensive.
It
then,
was expensive, right? So
and
somebody
you could probably type a letter on it.
Right, and that
was it.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do anything else.
You captured a few keystrokes.
It's kind of like 64 kilobytes. It's like
exactly
all the memory. So it, but I mean, somebody must have valued it enough to give this thing that they've paid money for.
Yeah, he liked it very much.
Yeah.
He actually bought another painting. So I guess in the early 80s, I sold my Lincoln 3 and 4.
Okay. And then you're living in San Francisco till when?
Came back to Connecticut for a job. I was a design director in the mid-80s.
To hear more of this and other great interviews, go to patreon.com/addressing Gettysburg and help support the show. We thank you in advance.